If you talk, yeah, it's right. Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the May meeting of the Ulster County Transportation Council. This is a technical committee meeting. So welcome everybody. We don't have to do roll call. So any public comments, particularly with anybody that is on, we have no one in the room. Is there anyone online that has a public comment? You please raise your hand. Seeing none, any comments from the council members? Anyone in the room have comments? Anyone online have comments? Thank you very much. Item number 3 on the agenda, the approval of the January 23rd, 2024 technical committee summary. Do I have a motion for discussion purposes?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Dave. Supervisor Placzek, do I have a second? Thank you. Mr. Pine is a second. I have a motion and a second. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Thank you very much. Communications and announcements. Ryan?
I did leave my communications and announcements packet back at the office. My apologies for that, but I do, off the top of my head, recall the UCTC, along with all the other 13 metropolitan planning organizations in New York State, received our confirmation letter from the Federal Highway Administration that our UPWPs have been approved. So that's great news. And then there has been general correspondence back and forth between various entities, including County Executive Jen Metzger's office, as well as Mayor Rogers' office with New York State DOT Region 8 regarding safety concerns on the state system. That those are ongoing discussions. I don't think there's any significant issues to bring forward at this point, other than what's known to all of us, that there have been some crashes on the bikes.
One of the other ones, the carbon reduction funds.
Yes, and that's later on the agenda. I'm happy to talk about that now, or it's up to you.
Why don't you do it now? Thank you.
Certainly. Last week, I don't recall the day, it may have been Monday or Tuesday of last week, our office issued a notice to the technical committee mailing list regarding availability of carbon reduction program funds to our members. You may recall that last year around this time, we issued a similar letter. We call it an expression of interest letter. This is to eligible municipalities. We're encouraging to submit project proposals to UCTC for use of our sub-allocation of carbon reduction funds. We have over 800,000 in federal CRP funds available for use. There are some stipulations. There's medium and large urban funds, and some of those funds can only be used in certain urbanized areas. And all eligibility rules do apply to carbon reduction funds. They essentially need to be used for the purposes of reducing carbon from the transportation system, carbon emissions. So non-motorized transportation projects, EV projects, bus transit projects are the types of projects that would be eligible. If municipalities have an existing project on the approved tip with a PIN, that is requiring additional funds, they can also request additional funds, carbon reduction funds, assuming it meets program requirements. And there's a 20% local match.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions? Any communications or announcements from members, board members? Hearing none, we'll move on to action items. Under new business, number 5A, draft UCTC resolution 2024-07, distribution of federal fiscal year 2023 Federal Transit Administration section 5307, 5340 urbanized area apportionments attributable to the Kingston urbanized area. This will basically distribute 5307 and 5340 money to Ulster County area transit. The resolution is attached. there's approximately, not approximately, there's about hold on a second. $1.3 million involved in this distribution. Ulster County is the only designated recipient, area transit, only designated recipient in the Kingston urbanized area. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion from Supervisor, excuse me. Jeannie Walsh, and I have a second from Ed Pine. Thank you. I have a motion second. Any additional discussion? Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Thank you. Item 5B on the agenda, draft resolution number 24-08. This is distribution of federal fiscal year 2024 transit funds, 53-7 and 53-40 urbanized area apportionments attributable to the Kingston urbanized area. This is the same as the previous resolution. It's just a different set of different federal fiscal year. The numbers have changed rather dramatically. And that change is now for the city of Kingston is $2,179,000 relative to that. We believe the change in the numbers is a result of increased ridership. Remember, Ulster County went to a free ride program on its bus system that increased ridership substantially in and around the Kingston urbanized area. And part of the formula is population and ridership. We believe that those NTD filings has resulted in an increased allocation of federal funds. I have a motion for approval.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Supervisor Walsh. Do I have a second? Thank you, Supervisor Platt. I have a motion and second. Any additional discussion?
I just ask, what do they plan to do with the money for their program?
5307 and 5340 funds are flexible funds. They can be used for capital. They can be used for operating. They can be used for preventive maintenance, and they can be used for, there's one other thing, administration.
Is there a plan already in place for what they want to use the money for?
What ends up happening with these funds, the county, typically right now, the county shortage on federal monies is approximately $3 to $4 million. So this is literally basically making sure that we have the necessary money for capital versus operating. Typically, what ends up happening is capital is reimbursed at 80-20, operating is reimbursed at 50-50. So these usually go into capitals, and the county is involved right now in replacing its bus fleet with additional buses, particularly small cutaway buses and larger battery electric buses, what they call BEVs. And I would suspect that that's what would happen, but they submit a TRAMS grant. Those TRAMS grants go through the county legislature for approval.
I have one other question. Is the fact that the ridership is up and we're getting more money for them, does that mean that it's making up for the difference of not having paying customers?
The county pays the customers. So even though the people are riding free, the county is actually paying that out of its own budget.
Okay.
For that. And the reason for that has to do with eligibility for some other reimbursements, particularly state operating assistance.
So the county's not getting any money to offset that. It's just Kingston getting the money for this.
Well, it's not Kingston doesn't get the money. It's the urbanized area that gets the money. The
Okay.
designated recipient for Ulster County for the Kingston urbanized area is Ulster County Area Transit. So
Okay.
the only transit entity that can get the money in the Ulster County Kingston area is Ulster County Area Transit.
And will that funding continue in that way? Will it still be the Ulster County that's paying the difference for not paying for the customer, basically?
That's a legislative decision
Okay.
right now. So, I mean, it is a legislative decision. We are engaged right now in a route optimization study. We're also engaged in a coordinated transportation plan study. So there are two studies going on now. But the policy decision as to whether or not rides would continue to be free versus and county paid for is a legislative decision.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried, thank you. That concludes the agenda's action items. And we're on to other old business, UTCT 24 federal obligation report, Brian or Sandra?
Well, we were going to discuss federal obligations. Sandra and I had a brief discussion 1 or 2 weeks ago. There are at least 4 projects, locally administered federal aid projects that are on the UCTC tip for obligation for construction in 2024. And Sandra, it sounded like the news wasn't so good regarding UCTC performance.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like those 4 local projects we already know aren't gonna make it this year. Actually, Nicole, is here though. Nicole, what about, I don't have the report in front of me. What about, state projects?
We did not have any state projects that were housed on UCTC's tip, so for this
Okay.
FFY.
So it was the 4.
So we had, the worst off the top of my head, I apologize, I don't have the list in front of me
No.
either. It was at least one county bridge project,
Route 299,
Route 299 shoulders,
Bridge in Wawarsing, North Gully Bridge in Wawarsing, that's 3 of them. I don't know.
Trail and ONW, DNH Trail in Wawarsing sidewalks. So 2 Wawarsing projects.
Yeah,
I think too, like, some of these are legacy projects, so I think what we really need to do. And, you know, we try to work with your office very closely before the snapshot's taken, you know, we refer to that as, you know, the snapshot. To right size it, because we do have an opportunity there in September. But now that we're also rolling into, you know, a tip update, it might be a good time to really look at the projects and, you know, we can bring to the table at least kind of the status, like, you know, what's been the movement on these projects? What's the last time submission was made? Does the project have design approval? You know, because one of the things that you consider, is where you maybe place it on the new tip, because that, you know, and what really the commitment is on the project end. And that could kind of free up maybe some money so that if the county does have projects, that you're more interested in pursuing sooner even, you know, those are things that you might want to consider.
And we did provide significant funding to at least several of those projects to get them past the finish line during the previous tip update. And yeah, we are.
2025, I think the Route 299 project is held up on right away.
Yeah, it's still sitting in right away, and the person in county attorney who was handling it is out on maternity leave.
Tongor Bridge, I believe, was another one. We don't need to go through all of them in detail, but I think it's a good suggestion that maybe over the course of this summer, if we don't have a lot of business, to bring our local sponsors in advance of the tip update that will begin this fall. And begin having that discussion regarding where everyone sits.
Yeah, and I would, you know, we can come to, you know, representatives from our local programs unit. And I would also say you should have the local sponsors consultant part of that meeting too.
Sure.
Really everyone, you know, so that everyone's aligned on actually what the status really is and intent. Okay.
So we'll look to do that for a summer sessions. I don't have any other resolutions at this time. That might change. To have a pre-tip update meeting.
And really, you know, we're talking about the 4 projects that were supposed to go to construction this federal fiscal year. You have other projects too.
Right.
So, you know, maybe you want to do an entire kind of, you know, I'm not sure how many projects that is in total, but you know, maybe you want to look at some of the other ones too.
This was the big year. I mean, 2024 was the big year. I mean,
Okay.
you and I had gone back and forth in terms of the amount of dollars that was going to be made available because there was 4 of them that were coming right in and
I know.
very large projects and,
And you know, what's really hard is, you know, I go back to kind of intent. It's really about getting that federal aid out into construction and getting things built, you know, and then when you have, you know, sometimes we refer to these as legacy projects and you make the funding commitment and then you make the funding commitment again and it's not delivered. We all know with inflation, I can't even tell you what we're experiencing. So I can almost guarantee you all these projects are short funding again. You know, it's a continuous, you really literally cannot catch up if you don't just get it out the door.
So you basically have to decrease the number of projects now.
Yeah,
Prioritize.
and I do think on some of these projects, maybe they need to look at the scope. What can you deliver? Like you mentioned, because, you know, you have a right of way issue.
Yeah, and it's in
And-
eminent domain. It's going through the process.
Oh, it
Yeah,
is.
it's eminent
Because
domain issue.
sometimes
Yeah.
you know, you just have to say, okay, we're not gonna impact on the property. We're gonna adjust the sidewalk or whatever it is that's causing that.
Is there, and this is maybe a different question, but, because I know we have a project, the streetscape project, that they've been messing around with for a long time, and I'd like to split it into two.
We do that all the
Because, so I
time.
had them ask the question, and they said they're waiting for an answer, but it is possible to split it, right?
We stage projects all the time.
And I'll tell you why I want to split it, because it's sidewalks throughout the hamlet. And half of it is sidewalks from our library to our middle school and a crosswalk to fix the safety. So I'd like to get that piece done. And then the other reason I'd like to split it is the rest of the project into town. I just got a grant from FEMA to bury the utilities. So I'd like to hook that up with this, when we're ripping up sidewalks,
Mhm.
because it would make sense to not rip them up twice. So I'm trying to coordinate the timing of that. So we can't split it into two separate.
You should be able to, I don't know the details of
Okay.
your project, but
Right.
that would be definitely something we want to
So
sit down.
It's a TAP project, so
Yeah.
a scope reduction is certainly feasible, but I think the next question is.
Well, we've already
what was
reduced the
proposed?
scope.
Right.
We've already reduced the scope. It's now just starting one half of the project and then finishing the other half of it.
Is it worthwhile to schedule a meeting with local projects and the project sponsors? Sort of a day to go through these, one right after the other.
Absolutely.
So why don't we think about that? And in particular, I know that the Ellenville issue is, that bridge is red flag. I know that that's the case, and let's think about that, and what we can do with it.
Mhm.
And put some project sponsors on notice that, delays equal dollars, and we don't have a lot of dollars.
We've always said that, and it's more now than ever.
Yeah, okay.
Sandra, one question along those lines. Have you received any word from central office regarding when we might receive tip targets and instructions?
No, I haven't.
We have a directors meeting on Friday.
Oh, good.
I'll raise that question. We
Okay.
haven't heard anything.
And I
It's a
don't,
little
have-
early.
and I don't have any information on Bridge New York or TAP either. I'm
You
sorry.
anticipated my question.
I know,
Yeah.
and rightfully so, but.
And TAP
we
would
should
be the
on it.
same question. We haven't heard anything with TAP
Mm-mm.
awards.
And typically our office finds out when you folks do too, so, but I haven't
Okay.
heard anything.
So on to project updates, Kingston Railroad Safety Project, Dave Stoss is on vacation, so he's been in charge of that. I can tell you that, we are, finishing up that project. The recommendations should be, back to us. Well, they are back to us, but we're really clearing up QA, QC in that project. And I know that Schumer was around to have a conversation with respect to the Flatbush Avenue project that the city is working on, and I see John Schulteis is on. John, do you want to mention that the Flatbush Avenue project?
Yeah, I can speak briefly about it if folks would like to hear. This project covers work on Flatbush Avenue from Colonial Gardens to Foxhall Avenue, and Foxhall Avenue from Flatbush to Broadway. It's been in the design phase for quite a while. We're about to enter the right-of-way acquisition phase with it. And there is a funding shortfall on this project. We've pursued various additional sources, including Safe Streets for All funds. Found out we were not successful on that recent effort, but yes, Senator Schumer is going to be pursuing something like a no, you don't call it an earmark anymore. Member directed funding, whatever the term is there. So, nonetheless, we're moving forward. Unsure where all the money is going to come from, but moving forward nonetheless.
Thanks, John. And it was nice to see the senator, supporting the project on, was it 2 weeks ago, I think, yeah. Ulster County Route 9W Mobility Plan, Brian?
Certainly, we're expecting draft final recommendations from the consultant, Creighton Manning Engineering, within a matter of the next, I would hope, several weeks. This project is past schedule at this point, and everyone is very eager to review recommendations for the corridor and wrap this project up. When those recommendations are delivered, the public will have an opportunity to review and comment, and we do plan on presenting in a formalized setting what those recommendations are, and then opening up a public comment period for that mobility plan.
Any questions on that? Ulster County, coordinated plan, Brian?
Yes, the Coordinated Human Service Transportation Plan is a transit plan that's been ongoing since late fall, early winter. We're under contract with Transpo and Marlene Connor Associates to develop the coordinated plan, which has to be updated every 5 years. The coordinated plan is a requirement of the Federal Transit Administration for counties receiving Section 5310 federal aid, which is a specific program to provide enhanced transit service to people with disabilities and the elderly. We're looking very forward to wrapping this project up in the next several weeks as well. We've received a general presentation on the overview of needs. The consultant, Chris Tights, and I did significant public outreach, not only for public meetings and fixed place public meetings and focus groups, but we
actually extended the public outreach in terms of budget, so we did additional public outreach.
that's right. So
Southern Ulster County and the Ellenville area.
that's right. We were in Gardner, we were in Big Indian, and Chris met with several other groups to have detailed conversations with public agencies and neighbor-to-neighbor programs regarding their transportation needs and the gaps that we are experiencing throughout the county. One of the things that we found just briefly was that while our inter-county connections are pretty good and have been for a number of years, and people are comfortable with those, individuals who live on the outskirts near Orange County or in the western section of Ulster County near Fleischmann's really would like to receive service out of Ulster County to medical services in other counties, which is not necessarily the way our system has been set up or designed. So that is a need that's been identified very clearly by.
And we've had some, really some hard pushes into Orange County. We run one route into Orange County right now. We've seen a push like that. And then we've also seen a push, quite frankly, from Delaware County as well. To provide service from Delaware County does not have an effective transit system. And so they're asking if Ulster County could extend some of that transit that runs into Pine Hill into Delaware County, Margaretville, Arkville, and those areas. So we've seen comments on that, both on the human services plan as well as on the route optimization plan.
That's right. So the human services plan is on schedule, and we would expect the final draft recommendation report to be available again in the next several weeks. It's going to be a busy next several weeks for UCTC with a lot rolling out. And that, like the 9W plan, will be open for public comment before it's finalized.
The human services coordinated plan controls the access to 5310 funds, which are for elderly and disabled. And in the past, they have been used pretty exclusively to buy buses for various entities that provide these types of services, that whether it be affordable housing or people that deal with disadvantaged communities. They've almost been project-based. So the discussion this go around has been to try to make sure that these buses that they're not sitting in somebody's parking lot waiting for somebody to ask for a ride, that we can use them across all of the people that are elderly and disabled by providing operating funds for these buses rather than have them assigned to a specific project. And there are examples of that throughout the system right now where they've been assigned as specific projects. We've had a pretty good participation from all of the entities involved, and the concern seems to be, and Dan Coots from NISDOT pointed this out, is easy to talk about, very difficult to implement, mainly because of insurance requirements and the various types of individuals that you're transporting. But we've tried to make that outreach part of the plan, so that when we look at applications for these types of buses, they're actually looking at providing a service, not basically servicing a project. Any questions on that? Hearing none, UCAT route optimization plan.
Yes, the route optimization plan is a consultant-based study. We're working with Foursquare, Integrated Transportation Professional Services, on this very expansive study looking at the Ulster County area transit system. So the route optimization plan will examine ridership and productivity on every single fixed route that UCAT is operating, and provide recommendations on how to enhance and improve those routes, and where our resources can best be focused in order to increase ridership. Another element of this study is to examine all the software that UCAT is currently using to manage its deployment of buses, scheduling of drivers, and scheduling the fixed route scheduling. And there are many other elements and aspects to software management for transit systems. So we'll be looking forward to an inventory of those systems and some recommendations on what we should be using, given the size of our fleet and what the fleet's goals are in terms of electrification and other issues going forward. So this study is really, we've been engaged throughout the year, and we're coming toward a flex point where we currently have a public survey is been out, and I hope that elected leaders and municipalities have forwarded that survey to your constituents. It is open to all members of the public, whether they ride transit or not. We want to have their perspective about transit and their knowledge as in terms of its availability. So that survey has been open throughout the month of May. We will keep it open into June. We have over 200 responses so far, which is a pretty strong showing, but we'd like to certainly increase that. We have a public meeting scheduled for June 18th. There will be two sessions, one at 3 p.m. and one at 5:30 p.m. In order to, because it's the same date as the Ulster County Legislature meeting. So we want to make sure we have enough flexibility, so if constituents or legislators want to attend both meetings, they're able to. That meeting will be held in Kingston at on Broadway.
Restorative Justice Center?
Restorative Justice Center.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis.
Sorry.
It was teamwork there. And it will also be recorded, and we will keep it open online so folks can attend and view the meeting at their own pace and submit comments if they have them. It's an introductory meeting to the project to provide an overview of what we intend to accomplish through this project.
Any questions on that? This is a highly anticipated effort that was originally discussed relative to the administration, and the legislature also weighed in on this in terms of taking a real hard look at these routes. One of the things that we are exploring is the use of microtransit relative to those routes as well. But we're in a data gathering phase right now, and then we would move to sort of give you an overview of what we know versus what we're going to do at this particular point in time. Any questions on that? Hearing none, we're moving to the traffic count program, not county program.
It
Traffic
is the
count
county
program.
program.
Yeah. So that traffic count program will roll out in the fall, early fall. If anyone needs areas counted, let us know. We have a schedule of counts. We usually do 40 to 60 counts. We can do more if necessary. But we count the county every 3 years. County is divided into 3 sections. We do a section every 3 years, and we'll do additional counts, particularly if we're doing studies in certain areas or somebody's looking to apply for certain kinds of money or something of that nature. I would say that the county is concerned with respect to the vulnerable road users and various types of speeding and other issues associated with use on the highways. The county is in the process of purchasing a substantial number of feedback signs that can be used either in a passive mode to take data or in an active mode to actually see what the response is to those in an active road. We would anticipate that when those are in and set up, that there would be a letter coming out from the Commissioner of Public Works informing all of the supervisors and the various highway superintendents that if they would like to use these facilities, one of these for a period of time, we would put them on loan. They are cloud-based. We're going to pull the information back into the county transportation department. And then they have to come back, I think, every 7 days or something like that to be recharged and looked at. But there's going to be an opportunity to take a look and respond to residents' concerns and your own concerns relative to things that you think are not correct on the various activities or speeds or something of that nature. On it, there are no camera facilities here. These are passive devices, but they are an interesting way to gather additional data, not related to the traffic count program, but certainly related to a traffic safety program.
That's right. David and I took the training seminar with the proprietor who manufactures the devices. They're based in Pennsylvania. They're really dynamic, easy to use devices. It's an easy to use interface. You can go online and review the data. The data cannot be used for engineering purposes, but they can be used to analyze traffic patterns in your neighborhoods if interested. So we would definitely encourage municipalities to use that resource once we're able to roll it out.
Any questions? Hearing none, moving on to the UCTC 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan Update.
That's right. UCTC had been anticipating kicking off the LRTP update this year, but after consultation with the Federal Highway Administration, we determined that update does not need to be completed until 2025. So we are more than happy to take the additional time to do more internal planning and preparation. We have our consultant is under contract, and we'll be using the additional time to begin public outreach probably later in the fall. The majority of the plan is written in-house by David and I, so we were very relieved to learn that we have additional time to complete that this year.
What's the goal on that?
The long-range transportation plan is a requirement of MPOs. There's, the three-legged stool, the UPWP, the TIP, and the LRTP. The TIP and UPWP projects have to be aligned with the goals stated within the long-range transportation plan. So a big part of the plan is data analysis. We examined the existing transportation system in very fine detail in Ulster County. So there's statistics that don't change year to year, like the number of bridges and the road miles that we have. But then we take a look at pavement conditions, sidewalk conditions, the expanse of the non-motorized system, the condition of those facilities. And with as much detail as we can, we also look at a lot of census data to look at equity and access to transportation to begin to identify what the needs are. Large scale. We also, a big requirement of the LRTP is the financial plan. So that is a deep dive that I do myself with the assistance of New York State DOT and our partners at FHWA to look at, to the best of our knowledge, available dollars. We use existing trends and then project them 20 years into the future to, given a fixed rate of expenditure and a fixed rate of revenue, what are the needs going to be when you do a trend analysis? And usually those needs are quite alarming because maintenance of a system is expensive. And when you factor in inflation and other factors, the costs are extreme.
I know this is kind of sounds like I don't understand why they do it in three different, like, why is it broken up? Like, why are the plans done separately?
Well, the UPWP is for planning projects, so
Uh-huh.
it's to anticipate.
But isn't that
planning
based
needs.
on the data you're collecting?
Think of it this way, think of this as a comprehensive plan that
Mhm.
then comes into a zoning statute.
Okay,
So think of the long-range
Okay.
transportation plan as a comprehensive plan for the transportation system that not only looks at where we are today,
Mhm.
but also looks at where we're likely to be tomorrow and then where we want to be. And those are the things that you start to, you put forth in a, what would the transportation system look like if you had your druthers, so to speak?
Right,
And then the next piece of that is, all right, given that, what do we need to know about the transportation system in terms of to allow that to happen? The UPWP basically says, okay, now that we've had this broad overview, let's go and look at the projects and other types of things or detailed areas. If we're really concerned about a particular congested corridor, we're really concerned about vulnerable road users, we're really concerned about the transit system, we're really concerned about highway resiliency. What in those areas should we do more of? And that's why we do studies on corridors. The Route 9W corridor is an example of that. The resiliency study is an example of that. The Safe Routes for All system, our Safe Street System program that we did is an example of that. It's taking those broad goals and then moving them into individual studies. Out of those studies, there's further recommendations with respect to projects. Does that kind of help?
yeah, but I guess I don't understand the separation of like a project that he's working on as opposed to what the overall council is doing to try to evaluate what's needed. So if a town or a village says, we really need this, is that part of your study or is that separate and like just?
So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is the work that we're doing is data driven.
Right,
So it's not that a town or somebody says, we really need this. It's looking across the system and say, what's really needed on a system basis? And is there data to back that up? It's not looking down into individual town needs. It's looking down into essentially the system's needs.
got it,
Whether it is the condition of bridges, the condition of roadways, congested areas, et cetera. The system doesn't follow essentially town boundaries. Are
right,
there concerns? Certainly, when you look at how the jurisdictional systems is broken up, federal aid systems, federal aid highways, the county-owned roads and local roads, you can get a sense of where the needs are
Mhm.
and how those needs can be addressed. The thing now is that the availability of a multitude of discretionary funds essentially says that you have some instance, the towns can control their own destiny using the data that comes out of the transportation plan.
But you don't use you don't use his data to help with your report. You come up with your data and then,
Frankly, he doesn't have data.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, your study but your study should include the things that
Yes.
each of the towns are concerned about, right?
Yes, and what we end up doing in that, Brian, you can jump in here anytime. What we end up doing with respect to that, there's another document that third leg of the stool is the tip,
Right,
which is projects that we're going to do, right?
and
But then within the long range transportation plan, there's projects that we should be thinking about doing, and these are added into the transportation plan as illustrative projects of things that we should be thinking about doing longer term.
And the long-range transportation plan, and then the discrete projects that we do in communities and neighborhoods through the UPWP allow us to prioritize funding on the tip.
Right.
Based on needs. It gives us a mechanism to allocate those dollars efficiently and fairly.
Okay,
And if you go look at a lot of your transportation discretionary funds, one of the things that they'll ask you is it consistent with the long-range transportation plan of the MPO? Is it a project that's been identified in some planning document?
mhm,
So there's a lot of value to essentially have these things out there, both in a general term and also with respect to what's out there in specific recommendations that come out of projects. Does that help you?
okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, good questions. And these are questions that we often address through our presentation called NPO 101. When
Yeah.
we get into that, it's always good to have an overview.
It's like when you're adding this for like 2 years and you come back, it's like trying to grasp it all again. It's like.
So, any questions from anyone online or any of the council members?
RTP.
Okay, moving on to the 2025 tip update, Brian.
Yeah, we'll be updating the tip along with the 13 other NPOs statewide, including NIMTEC, in the fall of 2025 is when that update begins. That the firing shot, the starting gun goes off when New York State DOT releases the rules essentially that govern how we will update that tip, which will include our financial targets at that time. And then what we'll do at the MPO level is form a subcommittee of this board, of the technical committee, to evaluate the existing projects on the UCTC tip, the available dollars we have. And then if it appears that we have dollars left over, we can consider the possibility of soliciting new projects for the Transportation Improvement Program. We have not done a solicitation for new projects through a tip update in over 10 years. Because as Sandra pointed out, we have legacy projects that we have been trying to fund and get across the finish line for many years.
Can we see a list of those?
They're on the tip,
Yeah,
right?
the
They're on the tip,
UCTC
okay.
tip is online.
It's online.
That can be a difficult document to view, given the listing of projects, but I really recommend that municipalities take a look at those projects and start to go through them, because you'll be surprised by the level of detail and the number of dollars that are being allocated and spent by New York State DOT in the Ulster County area, planning area. There's significant funding that's being applied for our roads and bridges. So I can send you the link to that, Gene,
Okay,
just so you're available, so you're aware.
Yeah.
And I think to put things in perspective, time-wise, hasn't it usually been around June that the MPOs have submitted their draft tips?
Yes.
I'm just saying, that's 12 months from now.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
So between now and next June, we'll
So-
have a new draft tip for UCTC.
Right, so to our advantage, we don't have very many projects on the tip. The locally sponsored projects that were listed over 10 years ago will hopefully be coming to an end. Otherwise, they have been largely discretionary projects like Transportation Alternative, Bridge New York projects. So it's a relatively small improvement program to get our arms around in terms of the financials. And if we do a solicitation, we have very specific parameters that we use that projects need to meet in order to be added to the tip. And that is completely relevant to the discussion we just had. They have to be in line with the long-range transportation plan.
mhm. Well, that's why I wondered about working, like, it feels like separated a little bit, but if we're making sure that we're aware the other projects might be coming up at the same time as we're doing an evaluation of all the data, gathering all the data. Just feels like sometimes I hope that we're paying attention to what the local municipalities are concerned about.
Well,
Of
I think the members here can exactly do that is, because maybe you feel that the amount of funding is on the smaller side though, but you could target a specific transportation goal in your long-range plan.
Mhm.
So you could say, okay, we're gonna do maybe a call for projects with an emphasis on pedestrians, right? I'm just using an example of sidewalks.
Yeah.
TAP is extremely popular, right? You could almost you know, do that version with the discretionary funds at this table.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's not
Set
just
our
an, not just an opened, you know, call for transportation improvement projects, but maybe something a little bit more focused.
Is that gonna help with getting the money for the, what
You-
you're saying they didn't qualify, but would that help? If you're doing what's popular in the area at that time, because I know that happens with other other funding.
Well, which
Yeah, like-
needed, yeah. I mean, it's up to this board, you know what I mean? You being a member, those are the things that you can consider.
So the thought that I have with respect to this in terms of local projects, particularly small local projects, is the what's happened with respect to the use of federal funds versus other funding sources, is it's federal funds are not a flexible fund source, and they come with a significant amount of administrative baggage, which adds to cost.
Yeah.
And so the state of New York, I think, very appropriately started something called a Bridge New York program.
Mhm.
They started something called the Culvert program. They have programs now relative to your CHIPS program, other types of programs that are out there that are specifically geared to local governments and local government needs that are run outside of the MPO process.
Right.
We do have off-system bridge money that comes in, et cetera, et cetera. But what I would say to you is that in many instances, what our job, at least what I think our job is to essentially provide that data so that when we have a conversation with the state and when the state looks at needs, it recognizes that you start running numbers that it recognizes local governments need this kind of data. The example I would give you is the bridge program and the off-system bridge program, where Ulster County, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your, has a number of local governments that own a lot of bridges. 151, I believe, 151 bridges in Ulster County are not owned by the state, not owned by the county, they're owned by local governments. Those bridge replacements are expensive and take some time to think about. So we have off-system bridge money that the town of Rochester has gotten, that the other communities have gotten, how Gardner got it, et cetera, and the Bridge New York program, in order to essentially help to try to meet those needs. But driving that data in terms not only the number of bridges, but the condition of bridges to look at a recommendation that says these are the things that we should be thinking about doing with respect to those kinds of needs, really helps the state make decisions in terms of what could be funded. And the other example I would give you, we started out with a Bridge New York program and we ended up adding large culverts to it. And the reason we added large culverts is because large culverts are expensive and a lot of local governments own very large culverts, particularly in the Catskills. So those are the types of things that happen from taking data and plan and then moving it into recommendations, which may not only come through this council, but outside the council in terms of understanding need at the state and federal level.
Thank you.
I think it's really important to remember that. And I think it's really important to have that conversation either through the Cornell Local Roads Program or back through your other elected officials to say these programs mean something to us. They should be increased in funding. The CHIPS program typically normally gets enormous amounts of support from the highway officials.
Yep.
You need to start to think about when we start looking at these areas and you start looking at your needs, having then conversations. Also, asking us to look at your needs collectively is also something that's really important.
Okay.
The PSAP program is another one that comes to mind. So there's a number of those things that we're trying to do that looks at the system holistically, but also recognizes the capability of local governments to essentially implement these things.
Right, and along those lines, the transportation authorization bills have gone through an evolution where many years ago, they dropped large amount of dollars to MPOs to spend locally. Now the programs are largely discretionary And it's up to the municipality to identify their needs and determine their projects and put forth a 20% financial match. And apply and hopefully be awarded and then see the project through to completion. The past several years, we receive a fair share allocation from Region 8 to be spent in Ulster County of STBG flex dollars, in $5 million.
Right.
I mean, the
And
Route
off
299
system,
shoulder.
and off system bridge.
And off-system bridges too,
Yeah.
or bridges, we receive a separate bridge allocation. But many of our projects these days are well over 5 million. Hopefully that number will keep track with inflation. We'll wait and see. But the other thing that's important, and as we stressed, we need to make sure that we're able to complete the projects we have programmed.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you know, we have 12 months until probably, you know, the draft tip needs to be submitted. I know that NIMTIC, is going ahead and assuming, as been discussed, that you can pretty much safely assume that the funding will be flat from the last update. So you don't have to wait for the state to provide the instructions or the planning targets right down to the penny. You can start to look, like we're talking about, in the summer, have the meeting, take a look at your existing projects. Add 2 years to the plan, assume the funding's flat. You can already start to have conversations about, is there gonna be money available to do something?
Mhm.
You know, and then if there is, right, minimally, there'd be 2 million. What, you know, are we thinking about for that 2 million? You know, and that however much also for the off-system bridge. I mean, you know,
Right, the document that essentially encapsulates all this is the tip selection criteria.
mhm.
And that is a document that we have and maintain in our office that we're going to open up a call for new projects. They have to go through the tip selection criteria. And so those criteria can be adjusted. So that's what we'll begin to
That
do.
could be
is
another
review-
nice thing to look at your next meeting for
Right.
this group, you know, I'm not even familiar with the criteria for this MPO.
It's,
But
we've
what-
never used it since I've been here. And we have not had.
We didn't have a new project to put on it.
Yeah, maybe it needs to be adjusted too, understanding the popularity of TAP and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, there's a lot of great, and you guys know what the great projects are that were submitted, maybe that didn't get, you
Yeah.
know, didn't quite make it, but, you know, had there been another $2 million. So I think that, you know, this group has a lot of influence on that potentially new 2 million, you know? Even the conversation, the last update was, we're going to fully fund our existing projects, you know, do you want to have the same conversation?
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Walt. 2024 UPWP FHWA acceptance letter, just a notification, right, Brian?
Right, I already mentioned this one.
Okay, discretionary projects, Safe Streets for All, Brian.
The FHWA Safe Streets for All program, which is a pedestrian bicyclist safety program, has opened up its latest round for projects. It's a rolling deadline. There are 3 different deadlines. The first is passed. I think the second is probably
August.
this week. No,
Yeah, no, it's this week, that's right.
is May. There's a May deadline, so that's irrelevant at this point if you're not already applying. But then the final deadline is August. These are applications for planning projects as well as for implementation projects. The bar for implementation projects is very high and requires quite a bit of data analysis. Your safety projects must meet the criteria identified in the Safe Streets for All program. And it's not easy to meet the criteria for those implementation projects. However, the planning side of it, David Stoss is preparing a Safe Streets for All planning proposal, which would involve every municipality in Ulster County to do a detailed update of our road safety plan that was completed in 2019 with a minor update in 23. This looks at all of our crash data, normalizes it for traffic volume on our roadways, and will provide a prioritized list of locations that have an above average crash rates in your municipality. Right now, we provide those locations, but at a countywide top 50 list, it's not prioritized by municipal boundaries. So we're going to begin to prioritize those locations by municipal boundaries. Unfortunately, this update even if we're awarded, it won't be in line with the tip update this year. But it will create hopefully eligibility for future projects for municipalities to apply. So more to come on that. We anticipate submitting that application in August.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Protect, Brian?
Do you mean TAP?
No, protect.
Protect.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped it. Thank you. Protect is the resiliency, FHWA resiliency call for proposals. It also has a planning arm and an implementation arm. UCTC submitted a resiliency action plan proposal to the Protect program for over $300,000. Unfortunately, we did not receive that funding. The proposal was rejected, and we have requested a debrief from the FHWA. So this would have prioritized transportation facilities based on their relative risk to natural hazards, primarily bridge and roadways susceptible to flooding and high heat. New York State did receive quite a few Protect planning grants statewide by New York State DOT and New York State Thruway Authority and New York City DOT. So it may have simply been the case that we just got bumped out of the running because there are so many other awards in New York State. But I look forward to doing that debrief and hopefully updating, finding ways that we can improve our application.
We would like to resubmit, am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought we had a very strong application, but we'll have to see where we went wrong.
We knew that some of the senator was interested and some of the congressmen were interested as well, so we were disappointed when it wasn't funded. TAP, Brian?
So the TAP solicitation is open, or rather it's not open. It's the project evaluation is ongoing. Right now it's at central office. And I believe the guidebook said that the award announcement would be spring, early summer. So we'll wait and see.
Mhm.
We're there.
Mhm.
Right. Here we are. So it could be any day now.
So if you are awarded, then we have to go through the process of adding you to the tip. So hopefully we'll have some work ahead of us with respect to adding projects to the tip. And we hope everybody is fortunate enough to get an award. Any other project updates or concerns that somebody
The carbon reduction program
Yeah,
is listed there, but we already covered.
talked about it? Yeah. Yeah. Hearing anything from any members online? Oh, I have one announcement. The county UCTC will be getting 2 interns
Oh.
for the summer. They're part of the county executives resiliency and climate change strategy. They're called the Climate Corps. So we have provided a work program for those interns for the summer to the county executive. We have a very interesting crop of interns that applied, and we were fortunate to get a very appropriate intern for the work that we have to get done with a
You
lot of
said
GIS.
two interns, all right?
Yeah. We had 2.
Right, one is a high level grad student and the other is a high school grad, so we
Yeah,
anticipate.
so one can mentor the other.
different
One
Nice.
can mentor the other. It's a good working pair.
Good.
Yeah, it's a good working pair.
I like the idea of a high school kid.
So we did receive a question from Emily, what will they be working on? I can answer that. We have 2 large projects in mind. One is an update to section 8 of the long range transportation plan, which is our sustainability and resiliency section of the document, which inventories greenhouse gas emissions and provides strategies for overall reduction of greenhouse gas emissions of the transportation system. So that will be one significant project for them to work on. It's both research, data analysis, writing, and document publication. So I think that's a good mix of tasks. The other is the Ulster County Executive had announced during her State of the County the need for Ulster County to update its complete streets policy, which was first passed in 2009 by the Ulster County Legislature. She's asked the UCTC to assist in that update. So I have a number of evaluation tools that can be used to inventory existing policies by a governing body. So we'll be asking the interns to do that inventory of the existing policy and looking at considering a safe systems approach, which is the new planning paradigm for road safety on our roadways. So they'll be looking to provide some recommendations using the safe systems approach for a new policy for Ulster County. Then beyond, those are the two big efforts. Beyond that, we have a lot of different tasks that we can do. Everything from sidewalk inventories to park and ride occupancy counts. There's any number of different tasks. If the interns are up for the task and the challenge and interested, we can have them working out in the field as well.
Great.
Anything else for the
Yeah,
council, David?
One other question. I know, Brian, we had sent you a letter about a current project that we're overrunning. And I don't know how, or what the process is. Right. I know Tom
Dennis,
Baird's
do you
on,
want to
and I
address
know
that?
Tom Baird's on the call
Right,
also.
so that was for the Tilson Avenue
Yes,
project.
Which, by the way, we're supposed to open the road tomorrow.
It's great news.
Yeah.
Keep trying to push me to Friday, I keep trying to push it to.
So,
It's straight today.
I think that topic would be better off right back to the local project units and
Okay.
set up a meeting with local projects.
Okay, what's the process?
So we reach back to Orietta at local projects to let her know that of your request.
Okay.
And we'll work back with her to essentially reach out to you and we'll all sit down together and see what we can
Okay.
come up with. I know that it's a fairly significant charge.
It is.
Yeah.
Which we found out significantly late in the process for all the wrong reasons, but we did.
Okay. So we'll discuss this offline.
Okay.
And we'll go through that. But yeah, well, we're aware of it and we got your letter and send it on to local projects and we'll see what we can come up with.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just FYI, the next traffic safety board meeting is scheduled to meet next month, this Monday, June 3rd. We meet in the legislative chambers at 6 p.m. There should be a pretty dynamic presentation this week about the legislative package before the legislature. And also one of our members was in DC, Washington, DC, advocating for safe streets. And we'll be reporting back on her experience.
Anything from the council? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Edward?